इस कार्यक्रम में भगवत गीता के आप सभी का स्वागत है। हम अभी तक हमारी 7 चैप्टर तक की यात्रा पूरी हुई है और आज हम 8th चैप्टर के बारे में समझेंगे, जानेंगे और हमें समझाएंगे और बताएंगे। अब तो मैं उन्हें कथाकार बोल सकता हूँ, हमारे कथाकार राम शेषु, क्योंकि वही हमें समझा रहे हैं, बड़े अच्छे से समझा रहे हैं और बातें सब उतरने लगी हैं। सुन के बड़ा आनंद आ रहा है, आप लोगों को भी आ रहा होगा। और आज हम आज का प्रोग्राम जो है, हम सीधा राम की राम को देते हैं। मेडिटेशन जो है वो प्रोग्राम के बाद में करेंगे, क्योंकि आज उन्हें कहीं दूसरे एक प्रोग्राम में उनका कमिटमेंट है, वहाँ उन्हें जाना है। सो वी विल स्टार्ट विद दी भगवत गीता। राम, स्वागत है आपका। अब आप चार्ज संभालें और हम सबको हमारी क्लास लें।
Bilkul. Thank you, Anurag. Shukriya. Let us begin by invoking the blessings of Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Please continue to guide us in this journey of ours. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I had a pre-commitment at 9:30, so I need to leave by 9:20. I have another program that I go to, so therefore I requested Swati and Anurag and Srini that, look, what we will do is that we'll just change the order around. So we will continue with our program. We will do the interaction that we do normally. Then at the end of it, at about 9:20, I've requested Swati to do a very beautiful meditation for all of you, which she's going to take us through. So we're going to have a nice, interesting program. So we're going to end this program with a beautiful meditation. That prepares us for the weekend. As you're aware, we don't have a session on Sunday. This is completely in respect to our stint in Roundtable. And therefore, we meet up on Monday again, right? So therefore, we take this particular break. So Swati, thank you very much for agreeing to do that meditation later. So we begin chapter 8. Chapter 8 is a lot, has been given various terminologies. But primarily, chapter 8 is how do you actually continue to be on the path of practice, abhyasa, and how do you actually focus on what you want to focus on. And therefore, it's an interesting chapter because this particular chapter addresses one of Arjuna's most important conditioning issues that he is coming up till now. And you will realize now as we go along, and when we start chapter 9, you will realize that Arjuna's conditioning now is almost kind of addressed, except that there are some last questions in his mind, and very, very important questions, like all of us. Okay, so if you recall, he started off by saying that, look, I will not fight. And then Krishna explained to him this whole concept of karma yoga, of the fact that he needs to do his duty and how can you be a man of wisdom. And then we explored a lot of very interesting concepts in chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, and finally yesterday 7. And yesterday, if you recall, in the last verse of the chapter, Krishna tells Arjuna that, look, this is the knowledge that I'm sharing with you, Arjuna, that will help you even when you want to leave this this earthly journey of yours. And if you want to move on from this earthly journey, this is the knowledge that is going to help you, Arjuna. Keep this in mind. Obviously, as I told you, this entire, the first 9 chapters, Krishna is actually setting Arjuna up in a way to ask him that question of his conditioned mind and how does he actually overcome that conditioned mind. So the first 9 chapters, just reading Arjuna's questions itself is a learning process, saying what are the kind of questions that Arjuna will ask Krishna. So he set himself up beautifully now. The last chapter, last verse of last chapter, he says, look, you remember he explained the whole concept of Adibhuta, Adi Yagnya, and Adi Daiva. And he said, when you keep this in mind, and when you are going to move on in life, you're not going to have any trouble. Remember in the second chapter, Arjuna says, how can I kill these people? Okay, and that's one last thought, last piece in that conditioning jigsaw that is there in Arjuna's mind, that Arjuna actually asks him, saying, Krishna, what happens? What do I need to do with this whole concept of death? And death is something that worries us. So let me request Srini to play the first two stanzas for us. There is no slide with this, but the first two stanzas of Arjuna's question. This is the first time that we're actually going to get Arjuna's question being played in this session. So Srini, and again, as I said,
Ashtamodhyayah Arjuna uvacha Kim tad brahma kim adhyatmam Kim karma purushottama Adhibhutancha kim proktam Adhidaivam kim uchyate.
the next one.
Adhiyajñah katham kotra Dehesmin madhusudana Prayana kale cha katham Jneyosi niyatatmabhihi.
So Arjuna's question is obviously very, very apt right now. He says, "Oh Krishna, will you please explain to me what are all these concepts that you explained till now?" Okay. So in many ways, Arjuna's question now is trying to unite all the different things that Krishna has talked about in the first 7 chapters. So he says, please tell me, what is this concept called Brahma? Who is this person? Who is the Adi Atma, okay, the higher self? What is karma? You keep talking of karma, which is action. What is karma? What is Adi Bhutam, which is, this whole being? What is Adi Daivam? And finally, what is Adi Yajna? This entire business of sacrifice. And finally, Krishna, how does a self-controlled person at the Parayana Kale, which is at the time of the death, how does a person realize that the interplay of all these, Brahma, Karma, Adi Atma, Adi Bhutam, Adi Daivam, and Adi Yajna are in play? And what happens when, at the time when you're about to move on, when you're going to die, how do you recognize these? Now, this particular question, as I said, is perhaps one of the last pieces in that conditioning thing of Krishna, of Arjuna, who's worried. He says, look, why should all my relatives be killed in this particular war? Krishna, you're telling me to fight this war, but obviously so many people are going to die in this particular war. And therefore, how do we handle death? Now, this particular chapter actually is very interesting from 2 perspectives. One is, of course, practice and focus. How can you practice and how can you focus? And the second thing, how do you deal with death? How do you deal actually with death? That becomes a very interesting part of this entire focus. So Srini, if you can show us slide 3 and 4 and play it simultaneously, please. This is Krishna's answer to Arjuna.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Svabhavodyatmamuchyate Bhuta Bhavodbhavakaraha Vitarka Karma Sanchitaha Adhibhutam Charu Bhavaha Purushaschavidaivatam Adhiyajñohamevatra Dehe Dehabhritam Vara.
Anurag, will you help me? Slide 3, the Anuvad.
भगवान बोले, नाश न होने वाला परम ब्रह्म है। स्वभाव के अध्ययन को अध्यात्म कहते हैं। प्रकृति से होने वाले सृष्टि के कार्यों को कर्म कहते हैं। पैदा होकर नष्ट होने वाला सब अभिभूत है। इनमें वास करने वाला पुरुष और नष्ट न होने वाला अधिदेव है। संसार और इस शरीर में अधियज्ञ मैं ही हूं अर्जुन।
Okay, so the idea here is this, that we are constantly aware that, the first certainty in life is death. If you remember, we mentioned this a little while ago, that the basic certainty of life is death. But if we remove this fear of death from each of us, then we can begin the process of living. And this is Krishna's message to all of us here in these two stanzas. So he's explaining, he explains all the answers to Arjuna, because Arjuna asks him those 7 questions and he's giving the answer to all those 7 aspects. And he says, listen, Brahman is the highest imperishable. Okay? That is the highest state that a man can aspire to get to. The highest state of being completely imperishable in terms of the principles that you are. And Brahman manifests himself everywhere. The Brahman that is within you is going to manifest in all that you are going to be doing. And then he talks about Adi Atma, which is the higher self that is there within you. Okay? And then he says karma. He says, look, this is the action of making those offerings into sacrifice. Now remember, there are 3 things that Krishna keeps talking about in the Gita. He talks about yajna, he talks about tapas, and he talks about dana, which is sacrifice, austerity, and giving. Now look at how all these 3 things are extremely important to us in our life. The act of sacrifice, if you remember, is when he was talking about that, look, it is only sacrifice that helps you create rain. Rain creates food. So our entire existence, our entire survival depends upon this attitude of sacrifice. Now, if you cut to today's context, what the sacrifice really is, that how are you going to sustain yourself? What are the kind of activities that you are going to perform on a day-to-day basis? Likewise, he talks about austerity, which is tapas, which is this whole issue of being selfless. And finally, he talks about dana, which is giving, which is how can you actually give without any expectation of a return. But we'll come to these 3 in a while. And then he talks about Adibhuta, which means he talks about us, which are the beings that are perishable. And then finally, he says that, look, Adi Daiva is the cosmic divinity. Adi Yagna, as he said, is the entire sacrifice, which is what I'm doing. Therefore, it is important for us to keep this particular thought in our entire mind. Okay? So Srini, if you'll play me, if you'll help us with verse 5.
Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yaprayati samadbhavam yati nasyatra samshayah.
जो कोई मनुष्य अंत काल में भी मेरा स्मरण करते हुए शरीर त्याग कर जाता है, वह मेरे स्वरूप को ही प्राप्त होता है, इसमें संदेह नहीं है.
So look at the beauty of this whole point. He says that, look, even when you are going to die, if you can keep thinking about me, which is the Brahman, which is the higher self, then there is no doubt about the fact that at that time also that you will come to me. Okay? So whatever action that you are performing at any point of time, if you can perform that action, you remember I said, live as if you're going to die right now. Okay? Live as if you're going to die today. Live as if you're going to die tomorrow. And live, make sure that you live your life in a way that it's absolutely complete, no regrets, having done whatever you want to do in your life, having achieved your purpose in life. So if you are going to keep that thought uppermost in your mind, that whatever I'm going to be doing in my life, I'm going to do it with that kind of a spirit, that I am offering it as a sacrifice. I'm offering it in a way to further the existence of myself, my family, my society, my mankind. That is something which you will then be able to say that this is the way to live. So he is actually, while he is talking about death in a way, he is teaching us this important lesson and saying that, look, when you guys are looking at this, this is how you need to look at. So how do you focus your entire attention on doing this particular attitude? Again, he gives us an example saying that, look, while we fear death, if we were to remove this entire fear from our mind, okay, and the entire explanation from verse 6 to 10 is actually that if you constantly keep thinking of a higher purpose in life, if you constantly keep thinking of your swadharma, then that is what is going to happen. So he tells us that, look, if you keep thinking of a particular idea, or if you keep thinking of a particular concept, then that is what you will become. So he brings this from a context of death, saying, at the time when you die, if you're going to be thinking of a particular God, or if you're going to be thinking of a particular object, or if you're going to be thinking of a particular aspect of life, then that is what you're going to be achieving in life. At the same time, if you were to constantly keep thinking of, what your higher purpose is in life and how you can go about doing that, then that is what you're going to be getting in life. So I think, we need to make this very interesting distinction that, yes, remove the fear of death. How do you live life as if you're going to die at this point of time? And at the same time, make sure that you live your life way that you're ready for whatever eventually in your life. And then he keeps talking. Verse 7, he says, keep constantly reminding yourself of your higher purpose in life. Don't ever move away from that. And how do you do that? And he says, by abhyasa, by regular practice. This is something that we need to do on a continuous basis. If you remember, we talked about abhyasa and vairagya a little earlier. Abhyasa is this entire aspect of keeping on doing the same thing again and again and again. It is this regular practice that we do of thinking of our higher purpose at all given points of time that will help us get that particular focus. That's why this particular chapter, we talk about it from a perspective of abhyasa, saying that this is something that Krishna is talking to us all the time, that it is this abhyasa that you do, and he refers to this very beautifully in verse 8, that he says, this is what will happen. In verse 9 and 10, he talks about the same thing, that you constantly keep thinking about that supreme self of yours, keep constantly thinking of that supreme Lord in your life as a means of realization. Keep thinking and it will get done. If you get absorbed in that particular kind of thinking, then that is what you're going to be getting in your life. Okay. So this is a very interesting, from verse 6 to 10, Krishna is talking to Arjuna, and through Arjuna talking, whatever you do, focus. Practice that particular focus. Keep at it. Keep at it as if it was the last day of your life. It is the last moment of your life. Even then, don't get detracted from the big picture of your life. Don't get detracted from the higher purpose of your life. Make sure that you lead your life in a way that you are constantly working on that particular higher purpose. Don't allow yourself to get detracted. The way he does it in this particular chapter is to take that one conditioning of Arjuna, because he asks him this question saying, how do I know all of this when I'm about to die, O Krishna? Please explain this to me. And therefore, he talks, how do you constantly keep reminding yourself? And he gives us so many examples, which he gave in chapter 8, if you remember, verse 8 to 11, when he talks that I am the taste of water, I am the smell of the earth, I am the strength of the strong. And if you remember all those different ways, those 15 different manifestations that he tells us, that this is me, I am there. So constantly keep looking at me in everything that you are going to be engaging in, and keep reminding yourself of your swadharma, of your higher purpose. Because that is the way, Arjuna, and that is the way all of us can keep ourselves focused and on track of what we want to do in life. So, this whole chapter that, the entire chapter 8 is in a way a little bit of a watershed chapter, because he is trying to tell us, don't worry about what will happen. You focus on the now and you live in the now. Okay. Will death happen? 100%. But when that death happens, will you go with a state of mind that you are completely comfortable with? And then he goes on from here into explaining to us, how do you practice this particular focus? What is that bhakti, that constant absorption that you need to do that will not allow you to distract yourself from what you intend to do in your life? And he gives us again some various methods and practices of how we can actually do this so that we keep a constant track on what we want to achieve in our life. Srini, will you help me with verse 12 and 13, please? It's again two very beautiful things on how do you actually practice this focus. Yeah.
सर्वद्वाराणि संयम्य मनोहृदि निरुध्य च मूर्ध्याधायात्मनः प्राणम् आस्थितो योगधारणा. ओमित्येकाक्षरं ब्रह्म व्याहरन् मामनुस्मरन् यः प्रयाति त्यजन् देहम् स याति परमां गतिम्।
Right?
व्यक्तियों को इंद्रियों के सभी द्वारों को संयमित कर मन को हृदय में स्थिर करके और प्राण को मस्तक में स्थापित करके योग धारणा में स्थित होना चाहिए।
Just hold this, Shini. We'll go to the next one in just a minute. So look at what he's trying to tell us in this. How do you actually practice this one-pointed focus that he's talking about? Okay. He says, look at that entire statement that he says, Mana Hridi. Okay. That means put your mind in the heart. At any point of time when you want to work on this, make your mind a slave of your heart, or make the heart overrule the mind at any point of time. And this is something which is very, very important. If you recall, we talked about this sometime back when we said how, the mind will constantly tell you to do what is correct. The heart will tell you to do what is right. Fix this way. Make sure that your mind is restrained. Okay. All the gates of the body, if you recall, we talked about this, the gates of the body as, the 9 gates that we talked about, the 2 ears, the 2 eyes, the 2 nostrils, the mouth. Okay. If you can make sure that these sensory organs of the body are restrained. And how do you do that? By going inward. You take this and place your mind in your heart. And once you do that, then if you're going to be, if you practice this, then you're actually going to be able to get into a concentration and the focus that you require. So fix your mind, always keep this in mind, that take your mind, make it a slave of the heart. Can we go to the next one, Shrini, verse number 13? Yeah, Anurag, will you just read this again?
जो मनुष्य ओम इस एक अक्षर ब्रह्म का उच्चारण करता हुआ और मेरा स्मरण करता हुआ शरीर का त्याग करता है, वह परम गति को प्राप्त होता है।
So, the power of Om, whenever we start anything in life, we always start with this word Om. Om is one of the most powerful, recitations that we can do. Even if you just keep repeating Om at any point of time, when you're doing any kind of work, if you're troubled, if you're disturbed, and if you can just keep repeating this one syllable Om in whatever you're doing, you will get a tremendous amount of ability to focus and concentrate. And therefore, he's saying that, look, even when you're departing from your body, if you were to remember the syllable Om, if you remember me and you chant the syllable Om, then you will certainly go about and you will achieve what you want to achieve in your life, the Param Gatim, as he says. But if what Om does to us is that it calms our mind. Every meditation starts with this syllable called Om. And if you were to sit quietly, if you remember in some time back, we talked about that entire concept of me time. And we said, if you can get that me time going, sit wherever you are. And if you can constantly keep reciting this word Om, even at the time when you're going to pass on in life, even when you're going to be moving on in life, that is the time that you will achieve what you want to achieve, which is the Supreme Personality, which is the supreme goal in life. So the point is this, that he goes on to explain to us that the reward for somebody who's a yogi, who's constantly thinking of me, is that I'm easily accessible to him. Now, again, when we go back and we look at it, we say, who is this person that you need to be looking at? This is your higher purpose. If you keep thinking of it, and if you keep reminding yourself of the higher purpose that you have in life, there is no doubt that we're going to achieve what we're going to achieve in life. There is no way that we can't achieve the happiness that we intend to achieve in our life. And therefore, he keeps telling us that, he goes on to explain that, in verse 15 and 16, he says that, look, there are these great evolved souls who are completely removed from this cycle of life. And how are they removed from this cycle of life? Primarily, this cycle of life and birth and death is because of the fact that they are the kind of people who have realized this ultimate secret in life. That if you are going to constantly keep reminding yourself of your higher purpose, if you constantly keep aligning your higher purpose with your own inner self or with the Supreme Godhead, then there is no doubt that you will go and realize what you want to go and realize. In verse 17, he talks about a very interesting concept of the Yuga of Brahma. And he says that, look, and he's actually talking to us about the inevitability of this cycle of life, birth and death, which means he says 1,000 yugas of Brahma. Okay, one yuga of Brahma itself is a huge amount of time in terms of time, but one yuga of Brahma, at the end of the yuga of Brahma, everything will dissolve. And at the beginning of the yuga of Brahma, all existence will manifest itself. So who are we to worry about when our death will take place or how will our death happen and what will happen with our entire death? If you remember, there are these 4 yugas, Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga and Kali Yuga right now. So the point really is this, that at the end of every yuga, everything will dissolve. So why do you want to fear death, O Arjuna? Come out of this entire fear of death. Start thinking that whatever action that you are performing it as part of your Swadharma, and you are doing it as an offering, as a sacrifice, as a yajna, to the highest person, which is the Brahman, within you and even outside, if that is what you choose to believe. So if we can adopt this particular attitude in life, then there is no doubt that we are going to get what we want to get in our life. So from 17 to 21, 22, he talks of this very interesting interplay. When you're going to leave your body, what is the time that you're going to be leaving your body, and how does it matter? The whole point is this, that whether you leave it at a time of darkness or whether you leave it at the time of death, of light, he talks about these two things. But look, the point here is this, that this is the inevitability that is going to happen. Nobody can kind of predict or nobody can time what you want to do and when you are going to die. But whatever happens, you are bound, so long as you are going to be working in this particular way, you're going to achieve what you want to achieve. So the entire interplay is very, very nicely brought out at that time. So if you can help me play verse 22, Srini.
Parah Partha Bhaktya Labhyastvananyaya Yasyantastani Bhutani Yena Sarvamidam Tatam.
हे पार्थ अर्जुन, संपूर्ण प्राणी जिसके अंतर्गत हैं और जिससे यह संपूर्ण संसार व्याप्त है, वह परम पुरुष परमात्मा तो अनन्य भक्ति से प्राप्त होने योग्य है.
So what he's telling us is this, that look, all great souls are free from this, cycle of birth and death. Don't worry about it. This is bound to happen. But how are you going to be doing it? And he tells us this, that look, the supreme divinity which is within us, or the supreme divinity which is God, is greater than everything that exists. Okay? And if you remember, he talked about this whole concept of Adibhuta, which is all the beings. And he says, but that is something that you will only know when you are completely practicing devotion. So the whole point is this, that if you are totally devoted, and if you're totally focused on what you want in your life, it is only then that you're going to be achieving what you want in your life. So it is this abhyasa, it is this focus, it is this bhakti, it is this devotion that you need to bring into play when you want to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve in your life. Okay? So this is a very, very interesting point that he is talking about in this entire chapter. And then he goes on from here, in verse 23, 24, 25, he talks about the fact that he continues to expand on how can you be extremely one-pointed and focused in life, okay? How it is important to be in a state of alertness at all points of time in your life, right? That you can't give up. So if you would, again, he talks about these two very interesting things in 24 and 25, in which he says that, look, if you were to die at the time of fire, if you were to die at the time of light, if you were to die at the time when the sun, in the bright lunar fortnight, and he talks about the fact that when the sun is in the northern hemisphere, that is the time that you will certainly come to me. And then he goes on to explain, however, if you depart at the time of darkness, and if you were to depart, if you were to depart at the time of darkness, if you were to depart during the dark half of the month, or in the 6 months when the sun is in the southern hemisphere, at that point of time you will return. So the issue is very simple to all of us. Okay, it doesn't really matter when you're going to be dying. As I said, that is something that we can't control in our life. That is something that is bound to happen to all of us. But it really doesn't matter whether the sun is in the northern hemisphere or the sun is in the southern hemisphere. That is not in our control. The fact is that if at that point of time you can be completely focused on what we are doing and on your higher purpose, on your swadharma, and if you can be focused and say that, look, whatever I'm doing it as a sacrifice. I'm doing it in a spirit by which I am going to give permission for existence to flower. If you remember, we defined swadharma as this. This is where swadharma's definition comes into play, that I am doing something to make me happy, and in the process, I'm also going to make the whole world a happy place. And if I can work with that kind of a spirit, it doesn't really matter at what time I'm going to die. And in this whole chapter, he's exhorting us saying, come out of this fear of death. Don't get scared of death. Don't be worried of death. Death is just something that will happen. If you recall in the second chapter, he says, just like a body sheds, just like we change clothes every day, we shed, the higher self within you, the Atman within you, sheds this body and moves on. So don't get scared of death, Arjuna. It is but natural. And then he goes on to say, how do you adopt that frame of mind so that you can do that? So Srini, with your permission, can we go on to verse number 26, please?
Shukla Krishne Gati Hyete Jagata Shashvate Mate Ekaya Yatyana Vrittim Anyaya Vartate Punaha.
Right? Rag, are you there?
क्योंकि शुक्ल और कृष्ण ये दोनों गतियां अनादिकाल से जगत के साथ संबंध रखने वाली मानी गई हैं। इनमें से एक गति में जाने वाले को लौटना नहीं पड़ता और दूसरी गति में जाने वाले को लौटना पड़ता है।
Will you just hold this slide, please? So here is the whole point, that these are these two paths that are available to us in life. You've got this bright path and you've got the dark path. Okay? They always are there. The way, if you were to adopt the path of the light, then you will get to liberation. The way of darkness leads to rebirth. Now, there is a higher meaning in this whole thing, that in whatever we are doing, can you adopt a frame of mind in which there is light, in which there is brightness, in which there is fire, in which, everything is nice and nature is in harmony at that point of time. So your swadharma cannot, sometime back, I think somebody asked a question saying that, look, what if your swadharma is leading to unhappiness in life, is leading to unhappiness to somebody else? Then it is not swadharma. The point is this, that if we were to take this particular attitude and say that, can we bring light in? Can we bring heat in? Because that is the natural way in which man lives. I'm sure that you would have all seen a very interesting foreword on the internet, which is really, really from this particular stanza, saying, does darkness exist, or is it the absence of light? Does cold exist, or is it the absence of heat? Does evil exist, or is it the absence of goodness? Now, what we are seeing today across the world, Okay, and look at this unfortunate, very, very unfortunate happening that has happened in Uttar Pradesh right now. And you know, my heart bleeds when I keep hearing of these things. What are we talking? We're becoming, you know, we're reaching into a place where the absence of goodness is pushing us. And that is what Krishna is telling us in this particular verse, that listen, men and women, if you were to adopt the way of the light, if you were to adopt, the fact is that these two paths are available to you, but can you please figure out a way that you're going to live with the light, you're going to live with the heat, you're going to live with goodness, you're going to live with warmth. You're not going to live a life with being cold, because that is not what you're born for. You see, we are not meant to be cold people, we are meant to be warm people. We will have certain experiences in life that may push us into the path of darkness, but that is not our natural stage. We need to get back to that path of light, which is the path of liberation, because that will help us to keep moving on this path of Swadharma and not hold us back and trap us there to remain in that path of Adharma. So the whole point of Krishna telling Arjuna is this, that look, your cousins have chosen the path of darkness. You and your brothers have chosen the path of light. So when you've chosen the path of light, then don't have any fear whatsoever, because you will not only achieve what you want to achieve in life, but you will also realize the higher God, the higher Brahman in you. You will realize that. Those people who have consciously chosen the path of darkness, they will not get to what they want to get to in life, and neither will they be able to achieve the highest Brahman in life. And this is a great lesson for all of us here, saying that, look, while we are working to us, it is actually, you know, while this entire verse 26, 27 actually refers to death, in a way it is actually referring to how to live. How are we going to live our life in a way that is in harmony with everything that is around us? And if we can do that, I think we've achieved what we want to achieve in this lifetime. And therefore, you know, how can you be mindful? How can you be joyful? How can you be happy? Because that is the state of mind that we are actually meant to be in. We're not meant to be sad. You know, I mean, I keep telling people that the minute you were born and you got slapped on your backside, you cried. And I think you've done with the crying for the rest of your life. Okay? After that, you finished. I mean, you know, you came into this world crying and that's it. After that, all the crying in life is over. You're meant to be happy. You look at a child, you're leaving a child with nothing. And, you know, child is playing on the ground and it's just happy. It's just this happy existence of that particular child. And then we need to make sure that we're going to follow that particular principle that Krishna talks to us all about. So in 26, 27, he's talking about death, but what he really is trying to convey to all of us is how do we choose to live? Because it's a choice we have that we can make, that this is the kind of life that we want to lead. Okay? And this is my life. I am going to lead this particular life in a way that I'm going to be very happy with. I am not going to lead my life in a way that I'm going to be unhappy about. Okay? And then he goes on to the last stanza in this particular, in this chapter. It's a small chapter, it's 28 stanzas. Srini, if you'll take us through verse number 28, please.
वेदेषु यज्ञेषु तपस्सु चैव दानेषु यत् पुण्यफलं प्रदिष्टम् अत्येति तत्सर्वमिदं विदित्वा योगी परं स्थानमुपैति चाद्यम्.
इसे जानकर योगी वेदों, यज्ञों, तपों और दानों के जो भी पुण्य फल कहे गए हैं, उन सब को बिना संदेह पार करके सनातन परम पद को पा जाता है.
Okay, hold the slide there, Shini. Again, a very important slide in this entire, you know, reconditioning of Arjuna and rewriting his entire mind. And he says, look, the people who knew this secret, gain far, far more. What is the secret? How to live life. The fact that you need to go and perform your sacrifices, your austerities, your charities. If you remember what we talked about a little earlier, that this whole business of sacrifice is to nurture existence. In those days, if you recall, we're talking of 5,000 years ago, extremely important to make sure. So when we're talking of sacrifice or yajna, in today's day and context, it is how are we going to sustain existence. Austerity is this entire business of being happy with what we have, of making sure that we can live in a very simplistic way. And charity is this ability to give, some dhanam. So he says that, look, if you know this secret, and even if you were to perform all the sacrifices, all the austerities and all the charities that you can do, this is far, far more important to you in your life. So this focus, this abhyasa that he talks about, saying that if you can make your learning process, if you can make your practices, if you can make your focus, if you can make it conducive, if you can get out of being run by the manifestations of the actions that you are going to perform, the outcomes of the actions that you're going to perform, then this is going to help you even at the time of death. Because Arjuna asks this question at the beginning of the chapter saying, Krishna, tell me what happens when I'm going to die. What is the thing that I need? What is the attitude that I need to adopt? And Krishna reveals this beautiful secret to all of us saying, this is how we need to live. This spirit of sacrifice, this spirit of giving, this spirit of austerity, this simplicity that he is talking about, saying adopt this particular thing and you will be then well and truly on your path to your Swadharma. Because we don't practice these things, because we don't want to let existence keep happening, we don't want to live in a simplistic way, and we don't want to give what we can of our time, our talent, and hopefully even money. We are moving away from our Swadharma, and that is what he is trying to tell us in this entire chapter. Though, mind you, he is answering Arjuna's question saying, at the time of death, how do I handle all of this? But this is Krishna's point. So a very quick recap of what of what this particular chapter is talking about. Arjuna's 7 questions that he asks. He answers him entirely on all of that, saying this is the Adhyatma, Karma, Adibhuta, Adi Daivata, Adi Yajna, Parayana Kale. He talks about all these interesting concepts. And then he talks about the fact is this, that when you're moving on from one state to the other state, keep remembering divinity within you. Don't get confused. Don't lose track of that. And he talks about how can you be focused when you're working on your Swadharma, when you're working in this life, the importance of focus, the importance of abhyasa and the importance of focus, which is practice. That is how you will be able to overcome even this particular fear of death that you may have. So if you're going to be meeting death in a happy state of mind, and that is what he's saying, that look, live a life which is in light, which is in warmth, which is in comfort, which is a life in which you are spreading the light, which is your wisdom, which is spreading that entire light, and you will achieve what you want to say. And therefore he says even at the end that this knowledge of focusing on the positive aspects at all points of time, and he says, though there are these 2 paths that you've got, the path of light and the path of darkness, consciously choose the path of light and you will achieve what you want to achieve. So this chapter ends with that particular message to Arjuna. And when we explore chapter 9 on Monday, you will realize how Arjuna's final, the final layers of conditioning in Arjuna's mind are kind of now being answered. Every single conditioning challenge that Arjuna faced at that time, which he mentioned to Krishna saying, how can I do all of this, O Krishna? It is better for me not to do this. I will not fight. And so from now onwards, and it's very interesting that we've got this break tomorrow, but from Monday when we start, we will actually start exploring the other side, which is till now Krishna's whole message is saying, don't do this, Arjuna. This is not good for you. But from now onwards, Arjuna's questioning itself changes, and he gets into talking to Krishna saying, how am I going to achieve my higher self? So those are, of course, very, very different kinds of chapters. There are very different meanings. But let us end this particular chapter with this verse number 28. The small chapter, as I said, it is how are you going to overcome the fear of death? But more importantly, how are you going to live life the way you were meant to live life, irrespective of what you've done? So my final word is this, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't really matter where you come from. It doesn't really matter what your experiences till now have been. It doesn't really matter what all you've gone through in life till now. This particular chapter teaches us one very important lesson. It is more important to figure out where I want to go from here. What has brought me here will not necessarily get me there. Therefore, if I can start focusing on and say, where do I want to go to in life? How do I want to lead a life full of light? How do I want to lead a life full of warmth? How do I live a life, which is warm, which is light? That is a choice that I have, and this is Krishna's message to all of us, saying that, look, make this change of your mind, Arjuna, and through Arjuna, he's trying to tell all of us, make this change in our mindset so that we can then move on from here. With this, we close formally this particular chapter. And we have a little time, so any observations, any questions, any thoughts, any shares, I'd love to hear them from
you. Whoever wants to speak can unmute themselves.
Thank you, Ramji. Thank you so much.
Krishna talking to you, Reshma.
That's why I'm saying, like what you said yesterday, I can only say I love you, Ramji.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, sir. Can I go can I ask something?
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Sir, in the verse 5, God is saying that in the last moment of one's life, if you remember me, you will certainly get, to me.
Yes.
You will get Sadgati. So don't we see this as a shortcut of, whatever bad karma you do throughout the life, and just, to get the Sadgati, in the last moment you remember him. So, I mean, just a innocent query I have.
No innocent. Sankalp, let me tell you, that's a brilliant question that you asked. I'm often asked this question saying, remember there is a very famous colloquial Urdu saying, Dilli 100 चूहों को मार के हज निकली, that kind of stuff. If you recall
Right.
that?
Right, yeah. So exactly.
So,
just on the same line.
so the point is this. I think Krishna's point is this, that okay, fine. I mean, let's take the worst case scenario. A complete sinner remembers Krishna at the time when he's about to die, and what will happen to him. That's one part, Sankalp, right? But the point I think in this chapter is also very clear, that if you don't make this into a daily habit, Sankalp, if you don't make it into a daily practice, the chances of your remembering Krishna at the time of your moving on in life is very less, Sankalp. That's his point to all of us. Okay? But if you should so recall at that time, great. I mean, I think in one of the earlier verses he mentions this very clearly in chapter 7 or chapter 6, that look, even if there is a wicked person who thinks of me, will reach out to him. Don't worry about that. Okay? But the point is this, Sankalp, I think if you can keep practicing this on a daily basis, then that is what will come naturally to you, Sankalp. Okay?
Right.
So will that happen? Possibly. I mean, good luck to that. Good luck to that person who's constantly sinning, but at the last minute of his life thinks of Krishna. Good luck. I mean, nothing wrong. Will it happen? I don't want to practice this, but more from a perspective of living, Sankalp. Okay? Can you keep doing what you need to do for your Swadharma in a way that whether you're doing sacrifice or austerity or charities, the three things that are very important that Krishna keeps telling Arjuna throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, yajna, tapas, dana. Okay, When you're doing this, can you do it from that spirit? If you do, then you're on your path of Swadharma Sankalpa.
Yeah, I think somewhat. Yeah, he answers this in the next verse, like 6 or 7, that provided you practice this throughout your life, it is hard to remember me in the last days. But my point was on those lines only, like someone who is managed, who can who is able to do this in his last moments. Can he get that?
Possibly, no, Sankalpa. All the world is, world says, okay, even the worst sinner, if he regrets at the last minute, it's good. But the point is not that. The point really is the other way.
I understand. I completely understand. And one small clarification. I'm sorry if I'm taking much time. Just one small clarification. In the verse number 12, he says, "Mano Hridi Nirdhay." So I generally think that man and hriday are one and the same thing. But when you explained the meaning of this, you mentioned about keeping your mind into your heart. So is there any clarification you would like to give? Because generally we think man is also hriday.
Yeah, it is not. The mind and the hriday are not the same, Sankalpa. Okay? It is the mind that interacts through the sense organs with the sense objects which are outside Sankalpa.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the mind that engages you with the manifestations of the outcomes that you perform. Okay, manifestations of the outcomes that happen when you perform actions. Okay? Whereas the heart, which is within you, is where actually your higher self resides.
Yeah,
so very, very important to make sure that the mind is a slave of the heart. Because if you can make sure that the mind is a slave of the heart, then it is the heart that will dictate to the mind what to do, and not the other way around. You see, what the mind will keep telling the heart, it will keep giving him justification. Okay? It will justify your action, which is not really something which you need to do, which is not enabling. So the mind and the heart are two completely separate things. As I keep saying, the mind will tell you to do what is right, what is correct, what is politically correct, what is expected of you. The heart will tell you to do what is right. Okay?
Right, sir. Right, sir.
Truth, concepts like honesty, concepts like integrity come from the heart. These are values that come from the heart.
Right, sir. Sir, I was very clear in that when you explained this to me, that the mind and heart, the mind should always
that
be
you asked
heart.
that
But
question. I'm very happy.
yeah, but the word the words that were written in the verse is man and hriday. So for me, man and hriday are both are the same thing, isn't it?
It is not, but Sankalp, if you want to believe that, go ahead. Nothing wrong.
Okay.
May I?
Yes.
Please.
So all of yesterday, I was thinking about one question one of us had asked about the possibility of the existence of heaven, and have we seen that? So whatever little my understanding is, that I think we all experience heaven here and now in this very realm, isn't it? As we are all at a different level of our, spiritual path, and we can experience it at different times beyond the probably sensual pleasures. And some of us probably experience it perpetually all the time, while performing our, dharma. Or we can also inculcate that, as, in today's context, by, abhyas, or practicing the right path, or the, path whichever has been prescribed to us by Krishna. So I think the very concept of heaven is more of a notional thing for us to, like how, some of us cannot meditate without having a kind of Krishna's idol, standing or sitting in front of us. Some of us can still meditate on him in his Amurta. Of heaven is also something like that, it's right here now, and right here with us. It's for us to experience it all the time.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. in the morning, for instance, when Anurag so nicely plays that lovely dhun, that lovely bhajan that he plays, for a couple of minutes, you're transported into heaven. I mean, that entire listening to Jagjit Singh Ji, with that beautiful rendition and, being with all of us here in the same, the same virtual room, looking at everybody, getting that, I think we're transported a little bit into heaven at that point of time. When you wake up in the morning and you see the early sun, you see the rising sun and you marvel at nature, you're also transported a little bit into heaven. When you see nature at work, in my earlier house, there used to be a lovely plant. And there used to be a flower that used to happen once a year. And that once a year, it happens only at night. And, it gives birth at about 8:39 in the night, and it kind of withers away at about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. You wonder about nature saying, it just does one flowering in the year. That's it. And after that, the tree is completely silent. So if that is heaven, no? From the perspective of seeing that flower come, that is heaven. When we would do the thing that I most miss about Roundtable right now is the Freedom Through Education programs that we would do. And when, we used to go to a school, and when you're inaugurating a new school, and the joy of those children running and, sitting on those tables and those benches and, saying, this is mine, and, taking great joy in that, and, taking that immense pride, showing us that classroom, that smile, that is heaven, man. I mean, so heaven is all around you. It's just this that you need to figure out a way of making that into a more constant observation, that if you can start seeing that, you eat a great dish, you feel like, you're transported back into heaven. So all of these are heavenly experiences, man.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other observations, questions, thoughts, shares?
Ramji, I just have one thing to ask you. That what you said was that the heart should take control of the mind. So many times, as what you said correctly, that the heart does gives you the right answers. But don't you think sometimes the heart also becomes a little softer, and you tend to take sometimes the wrong decision because of your heart and not the mind?
Yes, but then actually look at it, Reshma, re-examine that, re-examine that decision that you've taken, or that thought that has come into your mind, as to where is the origin of that particular thought. Is it from an external source, or is it something which is internal? But yeah, I mean, your heart is also entitled to make mistakes. No? Sometimes it's okay. Life, I mean, See, there is nothing there is no hard and fast rule, no, Reshma. There is no statistics to prove today that 99% that I've listened to my heart, I've been 1% of the time I'm wrong, or 99% of the time that I've listened to my mind, I've been wrong. 1% I'm nothing like that. I mean, it's just this, that if you can make that a habit of listening to your inner voice. What we sometimes we say, there is this gut feel.
Yeah.
There are times when you say, ye theek nahi lag raha yaar. Okay? There are times when you feel a little uncomfortable, Reshma. When you're dealing with some people, or you're dealing with some situations, there is this inner. Sometimes if I ask you, you weren't like that. Why are you feeling like that? You can't. There's no explanation to that feeling. No, it's just that inner voice that is telling you, "Nahi yaar, ye theek nahi lag raha hai." This is not making sense. Yeah, it's not. I don't know. I can't put my. You remember you say, look, I can't put my finger on why I'm not feeling like this right now. Okay? But then you will have all the rationalizations of the mind saying, नहीं क्या गलत है, इसमें क्या हो सकता है, नहीं ऐसा सोचो, तुम गलत सोच रहे हो. Okay, that is the whole point. So
but also, Ram, what happens is that especially like in a house, and with when you're interacting with others. Like in my house, let's say, if I have this gut feeling that no, this is not the right thing, or this is not what I should be doing, but sometimes children object to it. Children say that, why is your heart like this? Why can't you think from the mind? Because they don't agree to everything that you feel, and you sometimes think that you should think from your heart and not from the mind. Politically you may be right or wrong, but your mind doesn't agree to sometimes
Reshma, the
some
point
things.
is that, no, even if you do go by it, even if you do flow with that particular thought, that somebody is telling you to do something that you may not be fully interested in doing, you're going to end up being unhappy. No?
Yeah.
So there's the answer. I mean, is okay. See, it's not that every time your gut will give you the right thing to do. Sometimes maybe it will also tell you the wrong thing to do. It's okay. But just try and keep listening to that inner voice a lot more. It will make you more happy. That's the whole point. That's the point.
Thank you.
But coming to the point that you've made, Reshma, many a times what happens is your heart tells you something, your mind tells you something, people disagree with your heart. At that point in time, you turn around, and at least that's what I do. So I said, okay, fine, this is the way I feel about it. If you feel differently, go ahead and do it. And then we'll come back and relook at what we did. I may be proved right, I may be proved wrong, but end of the day, there is a little bit of disassociation that comes in. Action takes place, the outcome happens, and then you analyze the outcome and move on. So it's not a question of because my heart is saying this, let's get rigid, or my mind is saying this, let's get rigid. Somewhere down the line, little bit of flexibility and say, okay, fine, if you want to do it that way, go ahead and do it. We'll come back and then we'll look at it. Either way, we will accept we were right or wrong, whichever, and move on.
Arey wah. RP Venkatesh has come up with a beautiful one. The heart is always jealous, the mind is always greedy. Kya baat hai, RP? Fantastic, yeah? Where are you, my friend? Good one. Good observation, RP. Any other observation, any other thoughts, any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
I have a question, Ram.
Please, Anurag, go ahead.
How does one work upon the fear of death and accept as it is inevitable?
So, in this entire chapter, Krishna addresses this a lot, and we discuss this a lot. The first thing is to accept the inevitability of it all, Anurag. Okay, that this is something that is going to happen to every one of us. There is nobody who is immortal. Okay? Everybody, it is bound to happen one day or the other. There is no question about that, right? The second aspect is that since it is inevitable and it is going to happen, can we start working from today in a way that we are fully conscious of what we want to do for ours, what is our swadharma and how we want to go about achieving it? Can we get completely, fully absorbed in that? Okay, in terms of mindful living, in terms of joyful living, in terms of happy living. Okay, can we actually do that? Not instant gratification, Anurag. Okay, but the deeper meaning and purpose of life. Can we start living with that? So when we move into that realm and we start living life like that, should this death happen tomorrow, we are ready. Because we're working on our higher purpose in life, so be it. If it happens day after tomorrow, so be it. If it happens 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we never know when it's going to happen. Okay? But we have an option from today onwards to make our life joyful, to make our life happy. That is the option that Krishna is urging all of us to take right now. Saying, make your life happy. Okay? Work on your swadharma. Make sure that the three important aspects of life that he talked about, yajna, tapas, and dana. Okay? From our context, existence, okay, which is not only my own existence, but existence of everything around me, which is austerity, which is simplicity, okay, and dana, which is a giving attitude. Okay? So the last thing that he talks about in this chapter is that make these three things important: sustainability, which is existence; simplicity, which is austerity; and which is the ability to give. Okay? So if we can make these three things a part of our life, Anurag, sustainability, sharing. Okay? If we can do these three without any expectations of a result, in whatever way you're doing, Anurag, okay? Whatever be your business, whatever be your vocation, whatever you're doing in your life, if you can practice these three principles, Anurag, you are going to be happy. And well, should something happen tomorrow, okay, that's what happens. I mean, it happened. But at least when it has happened, you're going in a way, you're going at a time when you're saying, I've been working on this and I'm in a happy place at this point in time. That's the important thing.
Ram, can I add something to this?
Please go ahead, sir.
I think, what Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna indirectly to us, that we should not have any kind of fear. The biggest fear we can have, and that death is inevitable. Now, what is inevitable, there is no point in keeping any fear for that.
Exactly.
And that should give you strength not to have fear of any kind in your life. And yesterday, Mrs. Mehra, somebody very rightly said that, there are two things which can really, be helpful to us, for attaining the Sadharma, that, we don't have fear and we have the sense of giving. So I think that is what I would like to say, that, preparing us to have become fearless throughout your life. I think that is the message.
Absolutely. The biggest fear that people have is death. And if you can get out of that, think that, well, just so be it. Yeah, I mean, if it happens, it happens. You see, there is a famous research, I forget that research, but, this research was done amongst terminally ill patients. People who were terminally ill and who knew that they had very little time to live and, they were going to be dying in the next, some finite time. They were given 3 weeks or 2 weeks or 1 month, something like that. And the biggest regret they had at that time, the biggest feeling that they had at that time was a regret that they did not do what they wanted to do. Okay? That they were dying with a lot of regrets. And that's how, if you recall, there is this whole concept that came up called the bucket list. There was a very famous movie also that came up called The Bucket List. Saying that, what is there in my bucket list, that is, before I kick the bucket, what are all the things that I want to do in my life? Okay? They, of course, took it into a different plane altogether. But this whole concept of the bucket list is that, Ashutosh, that look, people, especially who are terminally ill and who have been told clearly that, you've got 2 weeks to live or 3 weeks to live or 4 weeks to live or whatever it is, unfortunately, die with regrets of things that they've not been able to achieve, they've not been able to work on, they've not been able to do, they've not been able to apologize for their failed relationships. These are the kind of regrets that they have at the time when.
Good. So Ram, that is exactly what I was going to ask you, Ram.
Yeah, go ahead, Rajiv. We'll take one more question and then, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you the same thing, because sometimes the fear may not be the fear of death as in death. The fear from the fact that, there must be a lot of incomplete business, the fear of leaving any incomplete business behind. Just like you rightly said now, sometimes the regrets are more that, I got to complete this, so I hope I manage to do it before you, move on, So sometimes the fear emanates from that.
Absolutely. And that's all the unfinished business that you have.
But how do you convince yourself that, what is not done is not done? I mean, how do you overcome that?
See, Rajiv, I mean, in a morbid way, in a kind of a morbid answer to your question, what to do? I mean, people leave with unfinished business, and then we have to finish that business. No? Person who's gone is gone, Rajiv. No? But yeah, I mean, that business, that unfinished work is being left for us who have been left behind to complete on their behalf. But then the point is this, that look, first of all, why get into a situation where, see, Rajiv, sometimes, unfortunately, this can happen in such an unplanned manner. You could die in an accident, you could die in an air crash, you could die, quickly unexplained way. Or look at what is happening right now, this entire coronavirus that is hitting us at this point of time. Now, these are things that are beyond your control, Rajiv. Okay? But his whole message is that, yes, that is something that will create an amount of fear in your mind. That look, what will happen to people I leave behind? What will happen to all the loose ends that are there in my life at this point of time? Will my family be able to cope with those loose ends? And will I be able to tie those loose ends together and things like that? That is bound to be there, Rajiv. That is an issue.
Ram,
Yes.
I have a small.
Yes,
Ram,
yes.
can I?
Please, last. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Ram, for me, death means that we leave the body and the soul flies off.
Yes.
That does not seem to be difficult to me.
Okay.
My difficult thing or my fear is the pain that might come with death. If I'm not lucky enough to pass while I'm sleeping, then the pain that you have to go through, the exhaustion of money that goes in your going, more so the pain. Like, what about the pain? The pain is what is the biggest fear.
Yeah,
How to bear the pain.
Yeah, that is an unfortunate aspect of life, ma'am. I mean, if you're sick, if you're in hospital, if you're not well, if you're ill, then the misery that you're going to cause for people around you, these are things that these are real issues, ma'am. And the only way to handle that is to sit down and actually think about it and say that, look, these are certain experiences that I will go through in my life, and just be prepared for it. There's nothing more that can be done. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really, really running short of time, but we will pick up this thread again on Monday. Please be here. Swati has got a brilliant meditation practice for all of us that is going to set us in the right path for the weekend and for the week ahead. Because next week we've really got a very, very interesting 6 sessions lined up for you, chapters 9 onwards, and we really, really have a lot of interesting time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Swati and Anurag,
Thank you so much.
Om Namo.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ram. Excellent. Now,
We now start with the meditation.
Meditation.
We may close our eyes and take a few deep breaths. Yesterday, Vikrant had put up a question. Has anybody experienced these planes? So I thought, let me make this meditation a little mystical, and maybe we can experience the alternative for a little time. A few deep breaths in and out, in and out. Relax. Relax your mind. Relax your thoughts. with every breath that you take. Go deeper and deeper into a state of relaxation. Visualize, imagine, or feel your favorite tree, golden, shining leaves, fluttering and whistling, gentle breeze, calming your senses as you admiring the trees. You wonder what is on the inside, and this thought transports you to other realms. Suddenly, you find yourself inside the tree, amazed to see an entire world existing in it. The tree inside is shimmering with gold specks. As you glide through the inside of the trunk, you become lighter and happier. Natural cleansing system spinning and whirling your auric energies. Glide, clean, spin, whirl. Glide, clean, spin and whirl. Gliding down the tree, you find yourself inside the earth, next to the glowing green roots, which are spreading out and waiting to welcome you, hugging you wide open, opening your heart to its surreal beauty. As you look around, you see the dwarfs jumping with joy, mythical birds singing to your soul, angelic animals protecting you, nurturing you, a happy, happy playground. One of the dwarfs now guides you to a bench. You sit, you watch, you relax and absorb the beauty of your surroundings. The bright yellow sun is warm and its rays emits a beautiful golden light, giving you a happy high. Suddenly, you notice the orange-red lava. Jump into the lava and feel its purifying energies. Roll, jump, be the child that lives within you. Now, as you step out of the lava, You roll in the brown bronze mud like a baby. Keep on rolling, giggling, and come out shining. Enjoy these moments as a baby would, letting go conditionings, letting go of all your holds on your own self, letting go of what anybody would think about it. Be you. Allow the inner child to come out and experience this journey. You now move towards the lake. The water is crystal clear with rainbow lights in it. Absolutely magical, pure and healing. Splash, sprinkle, like childlike amusement. It rejuvenates your senses. Everything you see and feel only heals you and fills up with love. As you look around, you see purple mountains where the fairies fly, twinkling like stars. Everything living in harmony, love, and friendliness. A world to create and to be in. Minerals, precious stones, glitter, calcium, kept in open like a buffet or a spread for your well-being. Now slowly enter back into the tree trunk. You see yourself into the tree trunk now, flying, floating upwards, 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 outside of the tree, feeling lighter, fresher, happier, with your eyes closed, focused on your heart. Send golden pink, infinite, love and light to the magical tree and the earth, thanking for this beautiful experience. Sending love to Mother Earth for giving you abundant resources. And so be it. So be it. So be it. Be in this meditative state for a few moments. Letting go of images, if any. Rub your palms, put them on your eyes. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Coming back to the here and now. Happier, giving, glowing. Welcome back.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you, Anurag.